It's a Wolfsberg Edition and it has an oil leak. This should be easy, right? Let's find out. Let's get started. This is a 2010 Volkswagen Jetta Wolfsberg, and instead of having the 2.5 liter that most of these have, this has the 2.0 turbo in it. This one came in for just one simple problem, an oil leak, and Danielson spent a couple hours tracing it down. We'll show you the process we went through of everything we thought it would be and what it actually ended up being. Through years of experience and working on so many cars, I had a hunch and I was right. Danielson checked this out. He did a really good job. We got to the bottom of it. Let's take a look around this thing real quick. Here's our Wolfsberg Edition Jetta. You can see it has a little chip in the grille. This one's not in pristine shape. It's been used a lot. It's a little rough in some areas, but it's decent. You see these 17-inch wheels have a little road rash on them, and they're a little bit stained from brake dust. They've been around the block a few times. There it is, Wolfsberg Edition, guys. Let's go down this side. You can see this is probably a daily driver for someone. It's not meant to be pretty and sparkly and clean all the time. We do see the 2.0 T badge on the back. It differentiates from the other 2.5s that you typically would find in these, or TDIs. Other than needing a good car wash, it's in pretty good shape. It's decent. Let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air. So just because you see a leak, just like on the floor, there was tons of oil when it came in, that doesn't tell you where it's coming from. And there's a lot of misleading things on this vehicle when you actually start to take a look at it. As we take a look underneath, you're going to see it looks like white powder all over the bottom. That's not from cocaine. That's from trace powder that Danielson sprayed under this after he cleaned the bottom. And what that does is allow you to see where are the leaks exactly. Let's take a look. So as you can see, it has this white powder everywhere. What we were looking for is known areas of oil leaks. One could be this oil pan, which you can definitely see has impacted something, but it's not leaking. Another area could be the upper oil pan, which this lower one bolts to. Again, it's dry. And then there's the rear main seal, which you would see it gushing out of this little tiny hole right here. It would literally just be pouring out. We ran it for quite a while, did a couple road tests. Nothing came out of that hole. Our transmission pan on the side here could also be leaking oil, or also the case half could be leaking. Output shaft, several things could be leaking, and what could it be? As you can see, look how much oil there was. The entire car all the way back is coated in oil. This isn't some slow little leak that has a couple drips here or there. It's pouring out. So nothing from this area where you would think the leaks would be is actually leaking. Let's go ahead and check the rest of the car over and show you how far back the oil was trailing. So our pad's about half gone. They're still good. The CV boots shafts are good. Strut is not blown. Sway bar link is good, nothing loose. I do see these tires are awfully bald right here. We'll let them know about that. Brakes again, 50%. CV shaft is good. Nothing loose there. This tire is really bald and it looks, let me check on the outside. Oh yeah, it looks like it's been flat before and they drove on it either really hard on it, crinkled it. They're definitely going to need to look into some tires. We'll let them know and see what they want to do with that. Let's check our fans, make sure nothing's damaged or no radiator issues. We didn't see any leaks coming from that. So another area that leaks can come from is you can have a lot of oil built up in the intercooler system since it's a turbo. We did pop this pipe off. There's really nothing in there. We were wondering maybe this is punctured and just pouring out oil and spraying it everywhere under pressure, but nothing going on there. And as we move back, you can see on this cradle right here, it's just like a swamp full of oil. It's everywhere. Then we come back to the catalytic converter. This is dangerous, guys. This thing gets really, really hot. And you can see, look at all this oil that was literally spraying on it. I'm really afraid that it could catch on fire with all that oil pouring on this thing, at least a lot of smoke. I'm glad it didn't. And I'm glad it's here so we can figure out what's going on and make sure something bad doesn't happen. So we're about halfway back on the car and it's soaked in oil. All these pans here are soaked This heat shield is coated in oil. No, we're not looking for rust proofing. That's not what we want with this car. As you can see, that could be dangerous. Head on back to the fuel tank here, and we can see we're still getting the oil coating. It's completely all over the shield, all over the fuel tank. A little bit on the muffler there, but not too bad. Don't see any other issues or rust going on. Our exhaust is intact. Everything looks good as far as that's concerned. About half gone. Nothing loose. Sway bar link is good. Bushings are good. Brakes are half gone. Nothing loose there. These tires have a little tread left, but not a whole lot. It's been a long time since I've seen oil travel this far back from an engine oil leak. And it's maybe seen it 1 or 2 times in my life. We're back here at this spare tire well, and even it has oil stained or coated all over it. I imagine it's probably blowing even past the car. It's really, really bad, the severity of the leak. So what could it be? Well, it's not below, it's not on the bottom. So let's get this thing on the ground and look in the engine bay. So up top, there could be 5 or 6 areas or more that could be leaking oil as well. Let's go ahead and get the hood open and show you the little 2.0 turbo. One of the areas it could be leaking is this oil filter here. Maybe someone didn't get screwed on tight, but we ruled that out. We didn't see any issues there. This timing cover, the upper one, could have this valve adjuster seal leaking. Also, the timing cover itself could be leaking, but we didn't find anything there. I'll go ahead and remove this upper engine cover here. Another place they like to leak is where this high pressure pump mounts to the side of the valve cover. There's a gasket there that can literally pour oil out. But it ended up being something that has nothing to do with any of that. I had a feeling someone's been in here, they've had something apart, and maybe it didn't get put back together as good as it should be. Danielson took another look, and this is what we found. Look at that, guys. It's silicone. It's so thick on there, it's smushed out the sides. It's just pouring oil down on the exhaust and down the engine block and down the back. Very, very heavy oil leak right here. You can see some silicone here as well. That's not where it's leaking so bad, but that's way too much. It's just pooched out everywhere. It also looks like they've been adding some oil, and maybe they missed and spilled a little bit as well, but this valve cover is really what's causing the issue. If you guys guessed valve cover, you were right. It's actually what's wrong with this, but it's not because of age or because the seal failed. Someone's been in there, and they put it back together. Very heavy layer of silicone. You have to think, whenever you see that much smushed out on the outside, there's also probably that much on the inside. Danielson has done multiples of these with these valve covers. It takes a very thin coat. What we use is anaerobic sealant. It seals very well. And you have to also think the valve cover on this is part of the entire cam bearing surfaces. There's lots of those bolts that are kind of loose that are holding the valve cover down. There's like 22 bolts on there. Some of them were finger tight. So there's a lot going on here. This is not one of those things where you slap some silicone on, call it good. There's a lot more riding on just sealing. There's actually gap and clearances and things that need to be right. So we got the okay to do the job. I did the estimate. I looked it up. I was thinking a couple hours. I looked it up. It pays 6 hours. And after I looked at it and talked with Danielson, he goes, well, yeah, we have to take the upper timing cover off. We have to take the high pressure fuel pump off. We have to take all this stuff off and then clean. Then we don't know what we're going to find once we get it off. It could be blobs of silicone all inside the cam area. There may be some extra cleaning involved and scraping. And also, being some of those bolts were loose, we could find some stripped out threads. So I definitely quoted the full 6 hours because we just don't know what we're going to find until we get it apart. It may end up only taking 4 or 5. But I quoted 6 so that we're in the clear to do this job right the first time. Especially with newer engines, more is not better. Say, well, the little strip of silicone will do fine, so I'll put a giant blob. No, that actually can break off and block oil passages and things. We've actually had a car in that came in with lifters tapping not too long ago. What we found out was the oil passage that feeds to the lifters was blocked with blobs of silicone. I mean, I had to get a pick in there and get the blob out and blow it out with compressed air out of one of the other ports so it doesn't get the blob into the galleyway. Another one of those things that I hear a lot that more is not better is refrigerant in an AC system. There have been times where somebody's system is low, maybe 4 or 5, 6 ounces low, just enough to trigger the system to shut off. They don't have an AC machine, they just buy one of the cans of Freon or refrigerant, or whatever you want to call it, from Walmart. And they say, well, I don't know how much it'll take, a half a can, a full can, what is it going to hurt? I'll put 2 cans in. And then it still doesn't work. So they finally take it to the shop. It's supposed to have 1.5 pounds in the system. We pull out 2.2. We're like, how? Oh yeah, I put a bunch of cans in there and it still didn't work. Yeah. Today's cars are sensitive down to the ounce or 2. They can shut off the AC system if there's too much or if there's too little. I have seen Hondas especially that only take 1 pound of refrigerant. And you go just a few ounces over. It clicks into overpressure, shuts off, and it doesn't work as well as it should. Here's another little story before we go. We had an F-150 come in years ago at a shop I worked at. It's supposed to have like 2.2 pounds or something in the system. The owner at the time, his name was Kenneth, he hooked up the AC machine, set it up to withdraw all the refrigerant out and walked away. We were expecting to see less than 2 pounds. It's not working. It's probably low on refrigerant. He came back to the machine. It pulled out 8 pounds. He was like, this thing was about to blow. How did it? He was just sat there for a minute. He actually had to sit down in a chair and he's like, I got to think about this because I didn't even know this is possible. I didn't even know you could do this. To go this far over. Why? Finally, we called the customer up and said, it's supposed to have 2.2 pounds. We pulled out 8. We'd like to know what's going on here. Oh yeah, I added another can and it still wouldn't get cold. And another one, it still wouldn't get cold. And finally, I just threw my hands up after I put 6 of them in it. Whoa. We're like, bro, you could have blown this thing sky high. You could have caused serious damage. We ended up finding just a small leak at the Schrader valve, is all it was to begin with. We repaired that, put the proper amount of refrigerant in, it worked fine. Perfect. So more is not always better, especially in this scenario we're seeing that it caused a massive oil leak. I was actually surprised when I looked this up to start ordering parts. It had the comfort line and the trim and all these different trim lines, and I kept looking it up. It said 2.5 liter, 2.5 liter, 2.5 liter. I thought, well, maybe this got written down wrong. I think it has the 2.0. And I looked, and this tiny little badge says Wolfsberg Edition. So I went and put that into the system, and it said, oh yeah, 2.0. It's like, oh, of course. Only that one model had it. Every other model had 2.5s or TDI. So I definitely wanted to get a video for you guys before it left the shop and show you how sometimes you think, well, it's got to be an oil pan leak. It's got to be a rear main seal. It's got to be this or that. And it can actually be none of those. It can be completely off the radar. After doing some serious digging, we got to the bottom and we found out what was wrong with this. Now we have the okay from the customer. They said, I understand it's going to cost a little bit to get that fixed. That's fine. You guys go ahead. So we got the parts ordered, we'll get this thing resealed, and the oil leak will be no more. If you're curious what kind of tools we use to work on this Wolfsberg Edition or any other car in the shop, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut if you purchase anything. We really appreciate it. Make sure to check out Mrs. Wizard's Way. She's got some fresh content she just put up. You definitely want to check that out. And hit the subscribe button here because we have many more cool videos to come. Thanks for watching.